Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Certs versus No Certs panel. I am very excited to be here with this amazing slate of people to discuss this topic. If you are on Twitter at all, you will see this come up periodically as the eternal question: are certs important? Are degrees important? Is experience important? What is it that makes you like a good cybersecurity professional? In my mind, it can be a bit of all those things. Oh, and let me introduce myself real quick too. I forgot that part. So I'm Marcelle Lee. I'm a senior security researcher with SecureWorks. And I actually have the pleasure of knowing all these gentlemen professionally or through this conference. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Jonathan, do you want to go?
Sure. Hello, I'm Jonathan Tomek. I am founder of a company I just started called Madx, where I do cyber to physical discovery of IoT devices. And I am a former Marine, a threat intelligence investigator, all the fun things, malware researcher, and I like to have a lot of fun. I am on the no certs side, but we'll get into that soon.
Sure. Hello, everyone. You've actually seen me before if you were tuned in for the opening remarks, but my name is Steve Higdon. I've been in the cybersecurity industry for something close to 15 years now. Everything from hands-on keyboard to now more managerial sort of thing. I would find myself on the certs side with an asterisk, which we'll get into later.
Hey, good afternoon. Jesse Tebrake. I work for a large insurance company as the threat hunt manager and incident responder. 12 to 13 years in the field. Started out as help desk, worked my way up from there. And I've switched on the certs versus no certs topic over the years.
Which way did you go, though?
Right now, I'm on you don't need them. But we'll get into that soon, I'm sure.
So that's literally my first question was which team you were on, which you all pretty much answered for me. I have like, I don't know, 14 or 15 certs. So I guess that kind of puts me on the cert side of the table. But I could definitely see the viewpoints from both sides, which is possibly why I'm the moderator. I don't know. Anyway, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you also is what is your work role? Like, are you hands-on keys or managerial? And you kind of touched on that a little bit, but maybe talk a bit about like what your day-to-day work role is like.
So now I am definitely hands-on keyboard doing my own thing, but I am formally also very much into leadership. So I don't like to ever say that I'm managerial because I really like to be as much involved as possible because you kind of forget where you come from if you're only managing people. But it's definitely goes all the which way. Like you have to roll up your sleeves and get into it if you want to keep your knowledge base sharp. So that's why hands-on is important for me, at least.
Sure. No, same with me. Just like Jesse, I came up through the help desk, and kind of moved my way up from there to system administration, network administration, and then finally to information assurance in the Army, which was before they could spell cyber. I don't think they can spell cyber even anymore. But yeah, it's strange. So right now I'm a cybersecurity program director. So it's largely not hands on the keyboard, but there's another side of that as well, because you touch on it perfectly when you mention leadership. You get to try to develop the next folks, because especially if you started like help desk like I did, you're able to see where their path probably is going to go, and you can kind of nudge them along that road, and that's probably the most beneficial part for me. However, it is pretty cool, I have to admit, when every once in a while there's a problem and I can, say move aside like young buck and write a script real quick to do something for them, and they are very awed. They never thought that their manager could do something like that. So that's a cool benefit.
Do you wear the hat at work as well, or is this a con hat?
So you will only see this hat on me at conferences.
So I've done a little bit of both. I came up to the help desk, so I was hands-on for the longest time. I switched over to the managerial side for a little bit. I didn't really enjoy it. That's one thing we can all agree on, I think, is you want to be your hands-on. You got to have the technical chops to be able to, yeah, that doesn't smell right, or yeah, I can help you with that. So the hands-on is the way to go for me. How about you, Marcelle?
Oh, I am very much hands-on keys. That's my passion. I like that side of things. And I was manager in my previous pre-cybersecurity life, and that was like boring, giant yawn. So I like what I do now. So Jesse, while you still have the mic, what do you do to keep your skills fresh? Like, is that a hard thing to do?
Yes and no. My current role changes all the time. The jack of all trades, master of none. I think a lot of the IR guys are kind of like that. They get dabbled in multiple different fields, network, memory, dead box, forensics. Right now, it's all on my own. That's how I started. I started the last talk with Oz and Sophia. Build your own network at home, and I still do that once in a while. And now it's just on VMs and getting those to work and detonating malware, new malware, old malware, to see if I can still pull the memory capture, pull the PCAP, see if I can still find what I used to. So it's just a constant. If you don't use it, you lose it.
So another version of me wears a different uniform for sure, and in that version of me, it is strictly hands-on keyboard. There's very little management or leadership there. So that's one way that I try to keep my skills proficient, but also just some research required. Even if you're like I said, cybersecurity program director, I'm having to sell cybersecurity solutions even internally, maybe not as much externally. And in order to do that, you've got to be able to do your research. You've got to be able to say, hey, there's a better way that we can do this sort of thing, especially when it comes to picking vendors or picking products, all of that. Because if you don't have that sort of expertise, or at least that drive to research, whether you have the expertise or not, then you're not going to be able to say, for example, like, yeah, I see you're trying to buy this new tool that's very expensive to do this one little thing that you're trying to do. Have you considered maybe combining some of the tools that you already have to get something that's pretty darn close enough to what you're trying to do? So between those things, and of course, conferences, being here, that certainly helps.
So for me, I'd say the biggest thing to keep my skills fresh is mostly a lot of competitions. I probably thoroughly enjoy that.
I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah, competitions, like hands down for me, is like the most important thing wherever I go. Even if they're easy, just to see if you could do it. But with the same utmost importance now where I'm at, I like building them. I learn way more now building puzzles and making competitions because I want people to like grow in their skill sets to like, I want them to follow a path. And if you give them just enough trajectory, they're like, oh, this is so cool. And I really enjoy when you see like somebody that is still doing this, like their eyes light up, like, I just solved it myself. That's like my favorite. So by me growing my skills, I'm actually helping somebody else. So it's kind of like that fun thing, but definitely I love competitions, whether it's DEF CON, BSides, wherever, just the most fun.
I'm totally with you on the cyber competitions, and I'm just wondering why I haven't pulled you into the Diana Initiative thing yet, because I'm running that competition and I have a crew of people. So hit them up later for that. Anyway, so just to, we're all former military, I guess. And one of the things I was going to ask is, with regard to your background, what was your path, like degrees? But obviously you're all military, so you can speak to that, but you might have degrees as well. I don't know what everybody has. So just talk a little bit about your journey, like how you got to where you are.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start because you're kind of leading that.
Yeah.
So
you're holding the mic.
Yeah, of course. Well, growing up, I wanted to be a computer GI Joe. And I literally didn't know what a Marine was until I was in the Marine Corps. I don't think most people know what a Marine is, but I do like crayons. And but either way, I did join, and I was doing a lot of hands-on keyboard work and playing around with networks and learning some very fundamental basic things because I just did not want to go to college. I was so adverse to doing it. And little did I know that the military is college. They just pay you and it's a little harder. But after that, after I got out, I'm like, you know what? I really like this security thing only because it seemed a lot more freeform because it's a lot more people don't understand. It's more wild, wild west. And I could really choose my own path. So after I kind of got into cybersecurity and just like doing hacking in general, that the path chose me more than anything. Because I just, in this field, you can follow your passion as opposed to this is the steps that you have to take to get to here and you stay there for 30 years and retire. So that was kind of my path and I'm still on that, but now I kind of grow a little bit more with my CEO stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say now you've got entrepreneur added to the list.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. So I've got 7 or 8 certs. It's funny how after a while you kind of forget the exact number, which ones you may have paid the CPE fees for. But I also have I have a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity. I have a master's degree in cybersecurity policy, and I also have an MBA. That was completely paid for by the military, and I was very blessed that so I'd been doing just basic kind of IT sort of roles within the military until I got to the DC area with my last active duty assignment. I was working for or in an organization where getting certs, and I had no certs at that point. We were getting close to probably 7 or 8 years of my time in the military. And I went to an organization where signing up for a cert class was just literally point and click. And you were in a boot camp, like a commercial boot camp, and you took the test at the end of the week. So within 2 years, I was able to knock out 5 certs, finish my bachelor's degree. That was a big jumping off point for me because if anybody's familiar with the military, there's this kind of rule that once you hit 10 years, you've got to make a hard decision on whether you're going to stay in, until retirement or if you're going to get out. And because of the location I was in, the certs, the training, all those things that I was able to get, my decision was to get out. And it's been a fantastic decision, by the way. But that's basically been from there. Was blessed with a really fantastic. I've been very lucky several times in my career. Role right out of the military, working for the Air Force, their CISO department. They didn't even really have a CISO at the time, but they were building it out. I learned a lot there. Got into kind of the sales side, the management side. So yeah, I guess that's my path. That's where it's directed me, and no regrets for sure.
I'm also a fellow crayon eater. My time in the military, I don't think I touched a computer. Just a rifleman, 0311. Never thought I would get into a cybersecurity career. I lucked out and got a job at the help desk at a government contractor. And again, a reference Oz from the last talk, but the passion. That's where I was like, I enjoy this. I'm good at this. This is a lot of fun. So that's how I started out. No experience, just getting that lucky break, I think no certs is also, either way, but the networking is just as important. So coming to these events, if not more important, sometimes find that just all you need is that one break.
Yeah, the networking for sure is a huge piece of this, and I don't think I even had a question about that. So I'm so glad that you brought it up because it definitely made a huge impact for me in my career. The networking piece. Does anybody else want to touch on networking a bit, or?
I'm going to say networking is probably your biggest thing. And the reason for it is because you play off of everybody else's passions and you kind of learn from their experience, whether it's at a conference itself and you just volunteer. Everybody wants to help everybody here. And that is literally the way you can grow because you get to see everybody else's excitement. You're like, I'm going to try that. And maybe you don't know how to do something. Let's figure it out. But everybody wants to help everybody. And that's how you can get jobs. I mean, I don't think anybody in this industry doesn't get or everybody gets a job from somebody else that's like, hey, here's your free form. You probably don't even need a resume at some points. Like,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
that's why it's so great for the community and networking.
So I agree. I talked just a little bit. I'll keep this short. I talked a little bit about, you know, my first job outside of the military and how I was blessed with that. And that was 100% from networking. I remember I wasn't even fully out of the military yet. And a buddy of mine who was a contractor said, hey, I'm moving on, but I think you'd be a good fit for this role. I'm going to go ahead and refer you. And I had a 10-minute phone interview that night, and 7 of those minutes was the hiring manager giving me interviewing tips because I had no clue what I was doing, but I was already in because, you know, I had someone who vouched for me, and that's extremely important in this field.
So that's another thing I wanted to touch on too is, you know, the experience thing. So obviously we all have experience now in this industry, but for people who are kind of new to the scene, what are some ways that you can kind of get experience? And competitions is one thing that comes to mind. Also maybe like volunteering in an event like this. So just what are some of the ideas that you all have?
Get the mic.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. Especially for people trying to break in. It's tough. I think there's a whole, I won't say industry, but that's a big part of our community is breaking into cybersecurity. I think there's some podcasts related to that as well. And that's it may or may not actually be called that. But yeah, that's a big thing. It's tough. A lot of it is, and I fully agree, you know, and I said earlier in the opening remarks, I probably get more out of volunteering than I do out of the talks. I love the talks. But just something about being around and actually meeting folks behind the scenes, that's huge. And you can learn so much just by sitting next to someone who's preparing their talk, you know, who's going to speak in 10 minutes and they're finishing up their slides. That's a really big thing. That's an easy way to get a little bit of maybe not experience on paper, but certainly experience in your head. And you know, home labs, that's a big thing. There's a ton of free resources online that are fantastic. Cybrary is one that comes to mind that's free. Any of those sorts of training things that you can do. I hired a guy once who had literally 0 IT experience on his resume. But when I was talking to him about, you know, have you ever dealt with Windows servers or anything like that? He was like, yeah, I've got a Windows server in my basement right now that I'm hosting all of my family's media on, and we're doing all of these things. And I've got file sharing going all over the place. I set permissions on everything. And I said, dude, like you need to put that kind of stuff on your resume because right now you're looking like you're just a cook, not an IT guy. And thankfully that guy became a really good friend. And now he's probably getting paid more than I am doing SOC work and as a SOC manager. So it's those little things that you can even do at home are huge for boosting your experience while you're trying to break into cybersecurity.
Can I just throw in a comment there too? With regard to resumes, like I always encourage people to put things on their resume. Like people are shy about it. Like they're like, oh, I don't really know it that well or whatever, but you don't have to be an expert in everything that's on your resume. You can at least have some talking knowledge to it or whatever. So I always say, put it all on there. Just don't lie. Lying's not good.
So you kind of sound like no certs there when you say the little asterisk. So it's funny. I do agree with you that it's tough to get into cybersecurity, but I actually am going to say that it's really not, because the tough thing is the intimidation and not knowing how to get into it. And I'll say that for most things, because if you're watching, you probably at least now know cybersecurity is a thing. So then it's just about getting involved. But outside of this group, people really, they're like, I want to get into cybersecurity. How do I do it? And then they have this intimidation factor of, oh, I've got to get certs or a degree in that. I'm like, nope, you really don't. I mean, that's the fun part about the wild, wild west here that we have is you just have to start picking up some things and it's free form. You can start learning as much as your brain can hold because everybody wants more people. I mean, there's no shortage of jobs, I'll tell you that. But it's getting over the intimidation, I think, I'm going to say that's number one, followed by just find the right people to talk to, which again is the networking thing, and then you can get to where you need to go. But
yeah, do a few cyber competitions. That'll help you get over your intimidation.
Oh, yeah. And you guys covered it. Same thing I would say. But these small conferences like BSides, really inexpensive. Put that on your resume too. You attend any of the workshops like the CTI or the OSINT, that's what you're trying to get. Those workshops, I mean, it's a small community, but there's still well-known people. Like, oh yeah, I saw that. I know BSides. And that's your foot in the door. It just takes one thing.
Yeah, this is not even a plug just because Sophia's in earshot, but I love BSides conferences. She's just monitoring us. I love BSides. It's my favorite con, hands down, and I really love BSidesNoVA a lot. So I think they're a fabulous way to kind of bite off a small bit, you know, because they're not like super huge. They're very attainable. There's lots of cool things to do. So yes, hopefully everybody who's here thinks the same way. So let's talk a little bit about, so I'm dying to hear Steve's asterisks. I'm pretty sure I know how Jonathan feels about it. Jesse, do you have any certs?
When I first got into IT, I had no idea what certs were.
Yeah.
On the help desk in my first SOC job, still had no idea. I saw SANS classes, but they were a little too expensive for me at the time. And not until I was forced to, as a government contractor, say you need these 3 certs to continue working here. I was like, oh, well, okay. So I got those 3 certs all within 2 months. And that's the only certs I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Because I did the classes, I did the workshops, I did the stuff. And none of that stuff was on the exam. And I was like, well, all right, then so that was the beginning of my formation of, if you better know the knowledge and the networking and the connections and the passion than the certs. But I know other people feel differently about that.
Well, I would also say not all certs are created equal. There's a very broad spread of like kind of good and bad. And let's just clarify in case anybody's not sure, we're talking about cybersecurity certifications. Just because somebody thought I was talking about like, you know,
like some of the basics.
Security operations.
Like your security plus, your the certified ethical hacker, and
so there's like the CompTIA line, the SANS various certifications, EC Council. These are different vendors. Most of the certifications.
It looks like we're gonna have a video issue again here.
Oh, should I stop or? Okay, should I pause? Okay. Okay, cool.
The audio's still going.
So
we may lose video here in a second, but the audio will still go.
You can dance on the table now. Maybe not as class. Anyway, so there's industry certifications that are sort of generic, and then there's other ones that are tied to a specific like vendor. So for example, like AWS that has a bunch of different certifications. Do you have, and I know not everybody got to talk about the cert thing yet, but just kind of expanding on that idea, do you think that some are better than others?
That's a dangerous question.
Well, I mean, you don't have to call out names.
Yeah,
but
not
like
to call out names.
Vendor specific versus not vendor specific.
So the problem with that is, and I think we're getting close to my asterisk, is that a lot of these if you don't have a vendor specific cert, then it's largely not going to be on the job requirements that were when you're trying to get hired for a position. And bless their hearts, I know some fantastic recruiters in our industry. I really do. But a lot of them aren't going to know, these, I won't say obscure certs, but these lesser known certs. They're not going to know about those. So in that case, even though some of those, I might argue, very high known vendor certs might be a little bit more about having a piece of paper than maybe actually gaining knowledge and and demonstrating knowledge, in my opinion. At least you know you're going to get past that first hurdle with the recruiters or with the the automated resume scans and that sort of thing.
So if you couldn't guess, I don't like certs, but I will say the AWS certs are much more of like an operator cert, and some places will pay you to get those so you know how to do things. Every place I've known, if you're very close, they're like, yes, let's just get you over the hurdle. But when it comes to like a security plus, and you like that, you're basically educating yourself at that point, so you might as well go the extra mile and learn the things that are practical. So I am a recovering CISP. I only got it because I got out of work for free for a week. And that was paid for. I didn't know what I was getting into, and I really sat back in the class, mainly because I knew a lot of the things, but the stuff that I didn't know, I'm like, why is this relevant? Who cares? Fire extinguisher put on the wall. But hey, it is what
I'm sure
it is.
somebody does. It's just not us.
Somebody does. But when you're looking at like the security plus or the A plus, I mean, those are for the people that really don't know how to break into a security world, I think. And for all that it is, it's like, to me, it's kind of like, hey, did you do this extra side thing? But I'm going to say, like, if we separate between like what's really good and which ones aren't, I'll say like the OSCP, the things that really push you having to know how to do something, as opposed to here's a multiple choice, memorize the test. It's less of a license, it's more of a practical knowledge. I'm all for it, but I would call those less as certs, as more of like I don't even know, maybe we can, it's like a diploma. It's kind of like, hey, I got my degree. It's the fundamental knowledge base, which I think is what certs were supposed to be. So yes, I do have my CISP, and I still do it just because it's kind of fun to say that I have it, because then nobody can talk about me behind my back. But
I'm pretty sure the CISP is not going to stop them.
There was a sticker a long time ago that went around that was not a CISP. So I missed those.
So there's a lot of extra action going on. What was the question? So I'd like to bring up a very important point. This is why cross training is very important, because I've been running the cameras all day and it's been nonstop. I never took the time to train anyone else. And now we're having camera issues. And that's our organizer right there. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
I think we were kind of on the topic of like not all certs are created equal, and
yeah, very true. Like Tomek said, the AWS ones are great. I've done the classes, never taken the certs, so I know how to use it, but I've just never had the time to do the certifications, I guess. The CISP, man. I think Sophia and I tried it a couple times, and we can't get past domain 2. Because I fall asleep within a couple minutes. But yeah, some certifications are better. And I think certifications come into play at 2 times. When you're first starting out, the basic one, Security Plus, CH, just that proves it, you know, a background, at least a little bit, you know, some things. And if you're trying to change careers, like if I was coming from a forensics, or incident responder or forensics individual, trying to get into reverse engineering, then getting into GREM, or GREM is one of the SANS courses, certifications. When you want to change within cyber, then I think they would come in handy as well, just to prove that, yep, I know at least the background, I know enough to get in there and do it.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. So just a fun story, when I was taking the CISP, I literally fell asleep twice during the exam because it was so boring.
I was the first one to finish my test because there was like 1,000+ people in the room for this CISP. I was the first one to finish, and I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, because people were still like doing it. Oh, that was a scary moment.
Yeah, I mean, not to talk smack about any, I mean, CISP is great for like managerial type people, but for me, it was just a total yawn. I only did it because, well, for me, like certifications are kind of like, it's almost like a collection thing. I started getting some and then I wanted more and more and more. And that was like a checkbox thing for me to get it. But I've never worked anywhere that like required certifications, but you all have. And like Jesse, you touched on
government
that.
contractors sometimes require.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, I think you're probably talking about like the DoD
8570. Yeah. At the time, it was Windows 7, CEH, and Security Plus.
Yeah.
And most companies will pay, if you're working for them, they'll pay for you to go to the boot camp or the crash course or whatever. And those are the 3 that I got, and I did not do the CPEs, and I did not continue them, unfortunately. That's my side.
Yeah, no. So CISP was the second cert that I got. So again, right when I moved to this area, really cool organization. They said, you don't have Security Plus. And I said, no, I don't have Security Plus. They said 8570. And I said, yeah, whatever. So they signed me up for that first one. And then I liked it. And I'm a fairly competitive person, and someone that I worked with had just gotten their CISSP. And I was like, I'm smarter than that guy. So the very next week, so I'm like week 1, Security Plus, week 2 was CISSP. Now, luckily, again, I was halfway through my bachelor's in cybersecurity at that point, which I think those are probably pretty close. If I were to put some things align college with certs, you know, having a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity and CISSP, it's a heck of a lot of the same material. So I was, and I'm fairly good at taking tests. I won't say that I'm smart. I'll never say that. Definitely not an expert at anything, but I am pretty darn good at taking tests. So that definitely opened some doors for me, because especially around this area, and at that time, CISSP in the DoD land had such a high ranking. You know, that was like that was the pinnacle of cybersecurity certs, at least to them at that time. So it definitely opened some doors for me.
So I'm going to say that if there's any crash course in a certificate, it's probably not going to be as high holding or high held, because you're basically just having to regurgitate knowledge really quickly. So I could even separate like SANS from just the certificates. Like if you're having to do like something within a week and you just have to, hey, let's get this. It's not, I'm not going to hold in high regard, but that doesn't mean that having, like when you're saying changing the careers, and you really, it's typically the people that just don't know where they're going. I'm also going to even kind of knock degrees right now, because I don't have my degree, in case anybody wants to also jump on me there. Everybody loves to do that. I did start it, but I got so bored, and I ended up getting a job out here, which is why I'm here. But the reason that I go into that is because college and universities are just so far behind the curveball when it comes to some of like the latest tech. I mean, they were barely touching IPv6 when I started going, and the teacher just didn't know stuff. I had to read the book, and I actually corrected the book. That's just me being arrogant, but it was just silly. But it was those things that I just was so interested in. And I think why I'm as adverse is because I think that people that are in this world I find their passion, and they're going to learn it, whether it's something they don't know about or they just have to figure it out. And those are the best people. It's kind of like that fundamental base. And yeah, a lot of people don't know how to like get there. But if you go back 100 years and people didn't know about computers, somebody had to get there. Nobody had certs then. Nobody had degrees then. So you have to figure it out. And that's where we're coming up with some of the coolest technology and tools, is because people were like, hey, I have this base. Let's go.
Just really quickly. Yeah, when it, just kind of expanding a little bit on the college part, the university part. I don't know if it's gotten better now, but I was able to go straight from, you know, through bachelor's to master's, because cybersecurity, if you're teaching it in that kind of environment, everything gets outdated by the minute, right? Like the second you say something, it's outdated. So everything had to be kind of theory based. So the cool thing is, for a 4-year degree, there's not a whole heck of a lot of theory that you can teach about cybersecurity. So it was largely the same class each time with a different book that you had to pay for, and different assignments, and that was it. It was the same class over and over again because they could only teach the fundamental kind of security principles. And I learned way more studying for certs than I ever did in any of my school.
Real quick. So I was like you.
It's no rush. You
for
guys
the
are good.
longest time. I just finished my degree. Thanks to my better half, convinced me to get that checkbox done. But I'm not going to say what school I went to, but they were still using videos and documentation for my programming class from 2011. So if that says anything about it, and you made a comment earlier about you're a good test taker. So that's why I'm kind of against certs, and nothing against anyone who has them. I know you're smart, so it doesn't apply to you. But I've seen people with the alphabet soup after their name on their email signatures ask some of the most rudimentary questions about how to do things. And then you look at the numbers and letters after their name, and you're like, I've taken that class. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to know what that is. So
it was 8570 that definitely did it for our industry, I think, because the DoD is such a big organization, and they hire, probably, I've never done the math, so I'm pulling this out of my backside, but they probably hire more cybersecurity folks and even IT folks than like any other organization. So at that time, I remember when 8570 first came out, and it required a security plus just to work on like a help desk. If you had any sort of privileged access to anything, if you had security plus at that time, you were guaranteed a job, first off, and two, you're probably guaranteed to get a job that you weren't qualified for just because there was literally nobody else out there. So I don't want to place any blame on any 3-letter agencies that we may have just been talking about, but that could have been, no, I mean it, that could have been the kind of the jumping off point about this whole argument.
You're right, and the interesting part is there are so many positions in this field that we need to fill that's why this is happening. There's not enough people that are trained in anything, but I guess the best question is, how do you find those people and then make them qualified? That's probably the better question of this. That's where the certs even came into play. But good test takers, hey, we got a lot of them.
Yeah, and I was just going back to the degree thing for a second. Again, not all degree programs and schools are created equal, and I'm a big proponent of community colleges because community colleges seem to be a little more nimble about having like more current curriculum, and they're more hands-on keys focused because they are skilling people up to get into a job quickly, not like a more theoretical path. So I often recommend community colleges to people who are interested in getting some kind of degree thing. And that's for me, like that was my launching pad when I got into this field. So definitely those are good. And then I will also say, like I teach security plus prep classes, but no, it's more fun to hear what you say. But when I teach them, we are literally hands-on keys. I mean, you can't do it all hands-on keys, of course. There's a lot of theory, but for the bits where I can dream up a lab or something for people to do, then we'll do that. And my students have been super successful because I think it helps like actually learn it as opposed to just cramming it in and spitting it out on an exam. But I don't know if you all have thoughts about like different kinds of training methodologies or what works, what doesn't. Yeah.
Hands-on by far is going to be your biggest one. I say that for like every industry. I mean, universities, colleges can only teach you so much, no matter what. I mean, unless you're like a doctor or a lawyer, and that's you're passing for effectively a cert at that point. But the big thing is they'll never be able to keep up with the way the world is moving. That's just what it is. And it will get you started. I mean, there are like programming classes that will kind of get you interested, but you still have to be the one to take that extra mile to go further. But you're not going to really, I mean, unless you're trying to get a job in Java or C++, that's usually the university college courses. You kind of have to do your own self-initiative. And that's why the community being at a B-Sides to me is kind of like more of an extracurricular thing. And I will immediately be drawn to somebody that goes to conferences as opposed to like a university course. But I mean, yes, some degree programs like Berkeley try to really push the boundaries, but oftentimes those people still have something under there like computer clubs. I like those. I like the Linux user groups. Like maybe I have a bias to that, but it just shows that you're interested more than anything. And throw it on your resume. Throw everything on your resume because I want to talk about it. A cert to me on a resume is like, it's a good talking point, and I'll be like, so what did you think about your cert? And then they can tell me, oh, it was the best thing ever. I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll talk about other things.
I'm trying to remember from when you interviewed me if you asked me about my certs.
I did. I'm certain if it was on there, I had to have asked you, so you have all these, are they a collector's item? And you're like, absolutely, I want to get more. I said, okay, well, let's get you more.
No, and I'm really glad that you brought up the community college thing, because that's certainly a thing. They're just, like you said, much more nimble. By the time, the amount of time that it takes to get a set of curriculum actually approved by the board to go through on the university side, a community college, that at least in my mind, again, no research, so the grain of salt, it has to be much quicker, and you're actually having practitioners. Usually your community college professors are practitioners out in the community anyway, so you are getting a lot more practical and updated sort of thing. And going on to the hands-on sort of curriculum, absolutely. I would much rather have someone who's that friend of mine who worked through extremely hard problems sitting in his basement, in front of his server, trying to work through things that he'd never done before. That's how we learn. They say that growth happens, or learning happens, when you meet resistance and then you overcome it, right? You're not really going to do that when you're reading out of a book or answering a test. Maybe there's some resistance there, but it's not the same. The magic happens when you're presented with things that you've never seen before, and you have to research, and you have to fiddle with things and break things and fix them again, just to make things work. That's where the development actually comes in.
So that's what a hacker is, right?
So that's what the CTFs are all about now. They are literally promo items. If you go and see a lot of the big ones that are on, like, every year, they're like, here's a stage thing. They'll throw problems out there. They're really a recruitment tool. So that's why I tell people to do it, because if you get to a certain point, you're going to probably get a job offer.
Yeah, I think about like ShmooCon, for example. Like, you walk around the vendor area and like practically every vendor is doing some kind of CTF, and it's absolutely a recruiting tool. And that's, I think, partly how you find that elusive passion thing. Like, we all talk about passion. It's very hard to like actually find that, especially if you're just looking at somebody's resume, for sure. Jesse, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to, we got 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure if you have any more questions about your topics. What was the question then? I'm sorry, I haven't had enough crayons for today.
I think we were just talking about different kinds of learning and training. And actually, I'm curious about, like, I think you mentioned Cyberry. I don't know if anybody else uses platforms like that for training. Like, I know I've signed up for like a lot of Udemy courses. Not that I've actually ever done them, but signed up for them.
Udemy and Cyberry I've used.
Yeah. So they have a place, I think, in the. I think it's more like if you want to learn maybe a new skill that you haven't explored that much yet. Like, I think I signed up for like a Golang class. I will do it one day, maybe. Just because I was still shitty. But I was coming across a fair bit of Golang malware, so it piqued my interest. Yeah. So yeah.
We have one question from the crowd. We're wondering, for the Certs lovers, how do we feel about CompTIA or the other cert out on any certs more than others?
So I'll definitely speak to the CompTIA line of certifications. Like I mentioned, I do teach a Security Plus prep class. I think they're a very good sort of introductory level certification for people who are maybe just coming into the field and they want to get something. They're pretty good. And I did Pen Test Plus last year, and I was very pleasantly surprised by that because there was actually questions about Python in it that I managed to work my way through. But they're not hands-on keys, but they're definitely more like looking at tool output and things like that. So it's a little bit kind of like fake hands-on keys, I guess. I don't want to call out the certs that or the companies that I'm not in love with, but I like CompTIA, so if that helps.
Yeah, and I'd say the same thing, and I'm probably not going to point out the same vendors that you're thinking of. Very good for introductory, and I think this is a good time to start exploring a little bit of the asterisk, and I won't take too much time. I know we're running short. So it's great. It is fantastic to have all the skills. It's fantastic to have all the experience, maybe even more of the skills and experience that are required for a certain job. But we spoke about our wonderful recruiters. When it comes to them, they're not going to be able to discern that. So I think the problem here is not certs versus no certs. I think it's the process for hiring, because while networking is really good for hiring, a lot of people, if they're not involved in the community as much as we are, they just don't have that. Or if they're changing industries, they're not going to have, someone who can vouch for them. So until we fix the hiring process to not be so cert heavy, especially when it comes to, you're opening up this position and you're going to stop the applications when you get to 200 people, the very first filter that's going to be done on all of those applications is going to be the certs that are required for the position, right? And you have a lot of even hiring managers, and I'm a hiring manager, but a lot of your hiring managers aren't going to know anything about the experience that's actually required for it. They're not even going to have good questions to ask. So that's why certs are leaned on so heavily for that sort of thing. So that's my asterisk, actually. Like I would be in the no cert camp. I would, if the process didn't require it. And right now, with where we are in our industry and the world writ large, certs just simply are important for that sort of thing. And I equate it a lot to compliance. So if you have a ton of different organizations within a certain industry, and they all have different environments, it all comes down to trust. How can I trust that one of these organizations or all of these organizations are going to be secure? You've got to have some sort of measuring stick against that. And that's what compliance, compliance frameworks are all about. He hates it when I say that. And he'll say cybersecurity frameworks, and I don't argue, but that's what they're all about, is they are a measuring stick against those things. And right now in our industry, certs are the exact same thing. That is your measuring stick, because it's the only easy measuring stick we have to compare a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. It's really a differentiator. If you have, 10 people that all have kind of the same background on paper, but one of them has Security Plus, then you're going to be like, yeah, maybe we'll go for that person.
It's like a time saver. It's really, we do a lot of interviews, so it's.
So, I mean, we could do an entire panel on how broken the hiring process is, not the least of which are, entry-level jobs that want you to have CISP and 5 to 7 years experience. And a lot of that is driven by the government contract work, of course. So I think we are seeing a shift in the landscape a little bit, but it's just so slow, majorly slow. So I think, are we out of time? A couple more minutes. Okay. So really the last thing I wanted to ask you all, and you probably have touched on this to some degree or another, but like, what is a piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's kind of coming into this field and doesn't really know what to do?
So the big one is, because if you're on here, I'm going to say get as involved with the community as possible. That'll absolutely be it. But I'm actually going to just change this, because if you are watching this, if you're part of the community, reach out to a lot of people to try to bring them in, regardless of what it is, because a lot of people are surprisingly very happy in the cybersecurity field. And that's the one problem that I'm seeing. It's not just the beginners, but find somebody that you can grow with and then come into this community with, because you will go much further. You go way further together than you do just by yourself, because you don't have somebody pushing you. That's
Yeah, that's a great point. Having like kind of a partner in crime or buddy to go through this journey with is a huge thing. I think for me that was my friend Dustin, also Marine.
Yeah. So my advice would be to try all the things. And we talked about it a little bit before. You know, imposter syndrome is real. You know, you go to these conferences, especially if you're brand new to the industry or not even in the industry yet, and it's just something you're thinking about. I usually give out some stickers that has it's a sticker of a camel with a unicorn horn that says imposter syndrome is real. I don't have any today, but I usually give those out at
What a tease.
I know. I usually give those out. And so much of our industry, and we talked about it a little bit before, is figuring out things that you've never seen before. That's a skill. So whenever I'm hiring, I'm looking for that exact skill. Like, what are you going to do when there's not an SOP for that, right? What are you going to do when some new problem, and especially, I mean, we could talk about O days for days, stuff like that. There's always going to be something in this industry that you've never seen before. What I'm hiring for is the person who's going to be able to like think through that problem and struggle with it, because that struggle is the #1 skill that I think anybody in this industry could have.
The problem solving, the analytical minds,
Critical thinking
Yep.
kind of stuff.
Big takeaway: network. Like I said before, I hate Twitter with a passion, but I'm on it because it connects me with other people. Yeah. Oh yeah, Steve's our Twitter guy. Get on and connect, network, volunteer for the BSides, DC, Nova, whatever one you're close to, and just talk to people. People are more than happy to help out. More than happy. Resume review. We didn't have one this year because we're not in person, but next year we'll have resume review. People on Twitter reach out. Like you say, most people in cyber are pretty happy. You get a couple people who are not, but they're just angry people in general. But most people are just happy to help and want to bring more people on. You know, no angry people here.
No, I will say, and especially, having come to this industry from another industry, I've found that people are so welcoming and like surprisingly so, to be honest. But yeah, so, and we could talk about diversity too, but like when I work with you, like I never feel any different just because I'm a female. Yeah, we just like to geek out together. So it's that kind of common ground, I think, and we're all doing something cool and making a difference in the world, which is important. Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
it was fun.